Hi everyone, and welcome to today's session in the Brewed for Success webinar series. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the many lands we're joining from today across Australia. I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us. Hi, I'm Nick from Checkmate, and I'll be your host this morning. So this session today is part of our employer branding coffee break series, which is a 4-part short practical webinar series designed to level up your employer branding and the time that it takes to drink your morning coffee. Now, I was telling Isla before, I've already had 2 coffees today, so I'm going to be sticking to the waters throughout this. But today's session is all about no fluff, just real tips you can put into action right away. So a few quick housekeeping notes I've been told that I have to share is that today's session is going to be recorded. So make sure you're smiling if you pop up, and feel free to share this with your team afterwards. Now, I'd also like this to be interactive, so please use the chat, drop in any thoughts, any questions as we go along, and I'll make sure to ask them. Maybe just getting us warmed up, maybe pop into the chat now and let us know, hey, what are you hoping to get out of today's session? Awesome, so time to meet our speaker. So we're joined by the lovely Isla Rolland, a good friend of mine and the partnerships manager at Team Taylor. If you don't know who Team Taylor is, it's a candidate-first ATS trusted by thousands of companies across the globe. So Isla's got a background in SaaS, strategic partnerships, bit of sales, I believe, and client success. She's worked closely with a whole bunch of businesses to help them bring their employer brand to life across the entire candidate journey. In today's session, Isla's going to walk us through how we go from, hey, we should probably start looking at that employer branding, to building a clear, actionable strategy. From consistent onboarding to storytelling that sticks, she's going to show us how to craft a brand that reflects who you are and resonates with the right talent. Isla, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for the very kind introduction. But yeah, I thoroughly recommend if you haven't already watched them, going back to episodes 1 and 2, where Keela goes over why your employer brand is key. And then Mark builds on that by going into building the business case. This is a kind of nice then runner up to those 2 sessions. And I am not an employer brand expert by any means, but I do get to speak to a lot of our clients and partners who really, really are experts. So I've picked up a thing or two. I've spoken to clients who have kindly let me put their examples in this presentation, and that's what we'll be talking about today. So yeah, to kick off, I made this meme myself. I'm very proud of that. But yeah, employer branding, as we know, is not what you say it is. It's what people experience and say about you. And it's how candidates perceive what it's like to work at your company. So the really annoying thing is you don't own or control it. It really lives in the minds of candidates, employees, and the public. And the big kicker is you think whether you have one or not, you do. So whether you think you have one or not, you do is a point Keela made and something we always say here at Team Taylor as well. But there are, of course, things that you can do to influence it, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And what I'm hoping to show you is that you don't need massive budgets and a huge shiny brand campaign. Candidates are really looking for a place to work that actually resonates with them, somewhere they can identify themselves working in. And if you can influence your employer brand to connect and build belonging, then you're not only going to convert talent, but you're also going to attract the right talent. Nice. So we all like a good step, and step 1 has to be auditing your employer brand. Before you do anything, you cannot improve what you don't understand. And feedback in this case, the good, the bad, the ugly, is really data. And internal insights are about understanding what's actually mattering to your teams. How does your team feel about working at your company? Why did they join? Was it what they expected? Where are the areas of disconnect? Why are people staying and why are people leaving? So I spoke to Nick Sebbings at Jumbo, and in their case, as they were speaking to their employees, they noticed a key pull factor was flexibility and support. So Jumbo really built that into their EVP and branding, and that's really where the catchphrase "Find Your Freedom" came from. And it's not just a statement and Jumbo, it's backed by policies, frameworks, and guidelines for managers to be able to act autonomously. And their career site also then communicates to candidates how they can exercise that value tangibly. So it's that consistency across how your employees feel, what's important to them, are they being supported in that, and then translating that to candidates as well. And don't shy away from feedback. I mean, on Glassdoor, there's a lot of stuff and it's powered by a lot of emotion. This is people's jobs, their livelihoods. And even the negative kind of feedback should definitely be noted. But what's often seen as a drawback to one candidate can also be a compelling pull factor for another. For example, a Glassdoor review that criticizes being thrown in at the deep end might be off-putting to some, but for others, it signals autonomy, trust, and accelerated growth. So there really is that balance between using these resources to find out really what people think, and then understanding that, improving it where you can, and responding to it. Oh, I didn't even flick the slide onto the next one. Sorry. It's about finding that out and then using it to be honest about where you're at and where you're going. Candidate engagement, a lot of our clients and most ATSs, you should be able to automatically send an NPS survey at any point during the candidate journey and after. So really collecting information, and I'm going to share some stats later in the presentation about some clients who have done this and had amazing response rates to this, but really gathering that feedback on the careers page that can lead to actionable insights and informed improvements. And perform a brand checklist. When was the last time you went through, reviewed your careers site, applied to one of your own jobs, read your job ads, looked at your office tour videos, even email signatures, and ask yourself in that, is it consistent? We're trying to build trust here, and consistency is really what candidates need to see there to get that. Don't be afraid to pivot hard. I love this story. So Eden, who I spoke to as part of the research for this presentation, shared with me that before he joined, the old EVP at Movember was grow more than just your career. So a statement that's really focused on career growth. And he was really honest. He said, look, we copied the pre-COVID trends where career progression was a top talent driver. And he said that it just wasn't authentic. It wasn't the reality anymore, because when he came in, he saw a very flat global structure. There was actually limited internal mobility, and there was really a disconnect between brand promise and employee reality. And when he was speaking to the employees, candidates were not joining to skyrocket their careers. They were joining and stayed for purpose, not promotion. And Eden had to get really honest about that with the company. They were like, look, this is who we are. This is why people are staying. And it can be slightly controversial to maybe be really honest about this isn't where you're going to skyrocket your career, but it's a place where you can do work that creates purpose. And there was a key word that kept coming up in all of those conversations, which was good. And so was born the Do Good Work for Movember. It's honest and purpose-led. It's attracting the right people. And it also accepts that some hires are staying not for the long term, but to do good work and create impact, and being okay with that and honest about that and upfront about that. So you're not getting that disconnect from when people are applying to when they actually experience working at your company. Define your EVP. So once you know who you are, why people join, what keeps people there, you can use this to define your EVP. And it's not about appealing to everyone. This leads to wishy-washy statements and confusion. And as we mentioned before, and I'm going to keep saying, candidates want clarity. And I've put some traps to avoid here. Being too generic, classic, collaborative, inclusive, fast-paced. If you think you read your EVP and that it could apply to any company, it's not going to be resonating with yours. Trying to please everyone, this is a really common pitfall. The tendency to want to appeal to everyone so that no one gets turned away, and you increase your application numbers. And then when you go through the interview process, you actually find that these aren't the actually right kind of people that we want to be speaking to. If your EVP isn't turning some people off, it equally isn't turning the right people on. Focusing only on perks, so free snacks, that's not a brand. Culture is about the values, behaviors, trade-offs, where you're going, and not the beanbags. So yeah, that's one to avoid. Ignoring internal voices. So EVP isn't just a marketing exercise. If your team doesn't see themselves in those values, it's not going to stick. Copying competitors, I do think it's really important to see what and note what competitors are doing, but using that to leverage then what makes you different and not the same. So go for that point of difference. Confusing nice with clear. So this is about being bold about what you value and expect. And we shouldn't be afraid to be bold. Clarity builds that trust. And I think vagueness actually only goes to confuse people and lead to people actually dropping out of your of that candidate process in some cases. And don't pretend to be sexy if you're not. Not every company is edgy, disruptive, or changing the world, and that's okay. Candidates respect the honesty. Saying and owning what you are, who you are, and not what people think, what you think people want to hear is really important here. And if you're not where you want to be at the moment, again, that's okay. Lay that out and tell candidates where you're heading and that they can be a part of that. And that can also be super attractive to the right kind of candidate. So all about being honest there. And I came across this article at like the perfect time. I think Andrea sent it to me as part of the Talent Table newsletter. And Ben is an employer branding expert with his own agency. So this is an actual expert. And yeah, he talks about authenticity becoming a buzzword that's slapped on every EVP deck slide. And we're not saying that authenticity isn't important. Of course, it's important to have that authentic content, real people, real stories. But it's not a strategy, and people have started using it as a shield to avoid making strategic decisions. So your EVP should really stand for something. In some cases, it should be polarizing, but if it doesn't say who it's for, it's forgettable. And again, it helps build that clarity when we're honest and bold about who we are. And I had to include this picture. It's not the most attractive of me, but it was my face when Eden told me the first draft of their EVP, which included phrases like work with balls, not with dicks. And obviously that didn't make the final cut, but the point is they started at one end of the extreme and scaled way back. So what they ended up with was something really distinct and aligned to their brand personality. And they landed in that good sweet spot. So yeah, start bold and scale back from there. And yeah, I think that's just to build on that. Authenticity isn't about being safe, it's about being clear and saying this is who we are, this is who we are for who we're not. And it's okay if that's a little polarizing. And it's about being comfortable to do that in order to attract the right talent. So what should great EVP do? From a lot of the career sites that I've looked at, worked on with clients and just admired, to be honest, is that a great EVP should create a sense of belonging. And this should be visible to the candidate from the offset. So if you, and I encourage you to go and check out all of these career sites, but if you read through Movember's, they've got statements like working for Movember, you'll help raise millions for men's health, not for a CEO's bonus. So they're speaking directly to the candidate using the you rather than the we's and the us. And they don't shy away from addressing the tension in their industry and understanding that that might be a concern for some candidates and playing with that a little bit. Another statement is, here it always feels like something big's about to happen, be it an office-wide surprise party with cake or an impromptu all-staff boogie. So he's really creating a sense of belonging with that, with like setting the scene about what it's really like to be in the office. And it can be really appealing to someone who can then see themselves in that fun environment. And then they've got this statement. I think it's here actually on this picture. Let's just get this out of the way. Big egos need not apply. So being honest about why people are there and why they're not. And again, a slightly polarizing statement, but one that's going to appeal to the type of person that suits their culture. So really look at what makes your workplace unique, the kinds of people that are working there, and weave those into your job descriptions and your weave that into your EVP, and then that into your job descriptions.
I love that as well, Isla, because you talk about no fluff right the way through, right? I actually went into the office and caught up with their team about a month ago. Awesome office overlooking Melbourne there. And it's such a cool vibe. Everybody in there is in there for the purpose. They're in there to bring that energy. And I think just, yeah, what we've seen right here and that wording that they've used is true to who they are. So yeah, they're not messing
Exactly.
around and making things up.
Exactly. And you know, Eden, he's a hoot and he's not afraid to kind of be who he is. And I think that's really reflected in the candidate journey as well. And even in interactions with even interactions with him and the team, that all comes through. So yeah, love what they've done there. And yeah, does your candidate experience match who you say you are? And I had a really great and honest conversation with Nick Stebbings from Jumbo Interactive, and yeah, candidate experience is the living face of your brand, and we just said honestly, getting back to a candidate is the bare minimum. It's human decency. This is someone who is looking for a job, and we've all been there. We've been in that position where you either feel uncomfortable where you're at right now, or you really need a job. This is your livelihood, and I think if you are not getting back to candidates, what does that not only say about the company, but who that company is and how they respect people's time and the situation that they're in? And there's really not an excuse to not get back to your candidates. If you're getting enough applications where you can't handle it manually, then you can get an ATS, and all of these ATSs have a automated feature that will, as soon as someone applies, give them an expectation of getting back to them. And if they progress, they obviously progress. And if they don't, then you can automatically send an email en masse. So it's not the hardest thing to do. And if you're unable to do it because you don't have an ATS, then maybe it's time to explore that route as well to help you with that workload. But joining initiatives for Jumbo, like the Circle Back initiative, just shows candidates that they care, that this is something where a lot of thought has been put into. I think that's made a huge difference in kind of Jumbo being able to say, this is who we are, and we're going to give you that experience because that's what you deserve, but that's also who we are. And I think that goes a long way in attracting candidates as well. And using data as well. So Benchmarks is another platform that Nick utilizes to collect data about that candidate experience throughout various stages. And the point of difference with benchmarks is it will actually benchmark you against people, your competitors, people in the same industry. So you can say, right, this is good, but is it good in comparison to what other people are doing? And you can then build off that and get an idea of what the standard is and then go above and beyond that. Beautiful. Let's go on. So, and creating clarity throughout the candidate experience. So, Safe Will is a scale up, and Emily there was head of people and culture and people culture lead. And when she joined, it was just her building everything from scratch, including the employer brand and careers page. And what I love that she did was she took the EVP values and she weaved the interview process around these values. And so each stage of the process becomes very aligned with the company's core value propositions, and it really helps candidates understand what is expected and how the company operates. As part of this, candidates receive follow-up information at various stages of the interview process, linking them to specific pages on the company website, including insights about coding or the panel interview, how to pass it, what they're looking for. And by being transparent and providing clear information about the interview process and what that looks like, Emily's really enhanced candidate transparency, which has led to better engagement. She told me a story around the specific role around engineering and seeing that it was taking the longest time to hire, but there were also significant drop-off rates between the initial interview and then the challenge. So after after that interview stage, they now get sent a link to a blog about what to expect during the coding test and system design so that they can go in feeling more prepared. And there's also advice around what they're specifically looking for and what success looks like. So with that, they've been able to see a little bit more stickiness in the process. If say full are being transparent about what to expect and how you can pass it, and they want you to pass it, then those engineers are more likely to actually embrace that stage and go into it with less fear and more clarity. And that's really helped improve the drop-off rate there. And Emily utilizes feedback mechanisms. She is constantly sending out NPS surveys to continually improve the recruitment process. There's a survey that gets sent to candidates post-application, which directly informs adjustments she makes to the careers page and overall candidate experience. And I've got the exact numbers in a later slide, but I think she gets something like a 19 or 20% reply rate to that. So that's pretty high. I think she got 300 responses from that, real actionable insight of people that are using the careers page every day, and giving feedback into how that can be improved.
That's so awesome.
This is another story I love. I think these quotes speak to themselves. Don't be afraid to build human connection. I was at the EVP summit last week, I think, and I think it's Dave Hazelhurst was speaking about this disconnection crisis. And actually a lot of us at work, I think the numbers were like 80% of us feel disconnected at work. And candidates feel that. Candidates are feeling disconnected when they're going through the process. They are feeling like they have to put on this corporate mask and that they can't always identify to what they're reading, what they're looking at. And one way you can overcome this is by making the candidate experience engaging and going beyond the usual questions. And Eden here uses this get personal by adding some additional info, and the application process asks really about who the candidates are beyond their work lives. And I think instantly, the minute you're not talking about work and something that you love or enjoy or are passionate about, you're revealing your true human self. We are all humans at the end of the day. And I think the more you can build that element of connection, that someone cares about who you are as a person, is the minute that candidates feel super safe, they trust, and they're gonna remember that experience. People forget what you say, it's how you make them feel that actually sticks with them. And these are just some of the quotes Eden shared with me from candidates in those post-candidate surveys. Really special words, I think. It gave me a great sense of my ability to assimilate with the team and business. I love the inclusion of personal details. I can't say I've ever shared the story I wrote in my fun fact in a professional application process before. So again, memorable, and it's going to stick with that candidate. And then candidates spread good news. So it's definitely a way to spread the good news. I think there's that quote, right? If you go to a restaurant, is it Anthony Bourdain? He said, if you go to a good restaurant and have a good experience, you'll tell 2 people. If you have a bad experience, you'll tell 9 people. So really think about that throughout the candidate experience. Lovely. And just a quote from Eden, when we had this chat, he said, I love that they're loving being able to show that authentic side of them. I've never seen this in my whole career, that people are just opening up. So it goes both ways, right? This is heartwarming, not only for candidates, but also for hiring managers. Support your EVP with real stories. So you create those EVP pillars and then you need to back those up. And these aren't like crazy stories. These are real everyday experience and examples. And SafeWill does this so well. Emily's turned her employees into real brand ambassadors, and they share those stories on the careers site. And this is what has to be authentic. These aren't candidates or employees doing crazy things. These are just them showing up, doing their job in the way that the company expects them to do. And by putting those clear examples out on the careers site, candidates can really identify with that and put themselves in those shoes and see if they're that type of person. Just checking the time. How are we going?
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, right? Let's through this. Craft a careers page that converts. So this is all the concepts we've touched on. The screenshots I've shared are from career sites. It's really the expression of your lived EVP. But more than anything, candidates are coming here to make a decision. They're coming here to see if they can see themselves working there. And candidates should leave your careers page with a real sense of clarity, not confusion, not vague, wishy-washy statements. So that's about knowing who you're looking for, and then speaking directly to them. Bringing those values for life, showing that you actually live them, being honest. And if you're not where you want to be, as we said before, show your candidates where you're going to be going, and delight with candidate experience. And you can back all of this up with data, and an onboarding that matches that as well. So yeah, SafeWill in this post application survey got a 19% response rate, which, as I mentioned, was 330 responses. So that's 330 candidates that felt that they had been given enough information to share their experience on what's working and what wasn't. And that's dictated exactly what Emily puts into the career site, and she can back that up with data. Movember also the same, that those quotes. Eden got 146 comments, 29% response rate, all candidates sharing about their experience, and he's got hundreds of quotes now to show the team that it's working. And finally, we're ending at onboarding. So your employer brand really doesn't stop at you're hired, and if you've done the work and being honest and being open about what to expect, then this shouldn't be the biggest issue for you, because candidates will know on day one what they're walking into, what to expect. I was speaking to Emily about this, who's the first to admit that working at startups can be challenging and scrappy. And you have to be realistic about that throughout the process. You might be hiring for a junior or mid-level position who will end up having a lot of ownership from day one, and that might be too much pressure if you're not clear about those challenges that exist. So really understanding those challenges, communicating them will really help down the line with that attrition and turnover. Because if you sell the dream, people will start and days realize, and as soon as they start, they realize in the onboarding that it's not what they thought it was. So super important to be upfront about that, because it can all come crumbling down in the onboarding if not. And yeah, I think during onboarding you have this brief moment where your candidates, where you can show your candidates that you're serious about those EVPs. So in that previous example with Jumbo, their message of freedom is backed up by guidelines, policies, and frameworks that empower employees and managers to make their own call when it comes to the role. So right off the bat, those feelings of its autonomy and trust are reinforced, and candidates start really feeling that as well from day one. And link your employee advocacy really closely to this candidate experience and onboarding experience. It helps them feel like they belong very quickly, because they're able to put themselves in these shoes of people who have walked their path. And if they have a great experience in their first month, they're likely to be highly, highly engaged. And you can then lean on them for that new starter advocacy. So it really pays back. People that have had good experiences are way more open to then sharing more with other people, because they want to talk about it. They want to spread the good news, and that's obviously going to impact your referrals as well. So yeah, I think that brings me to the end. Hopefully we got it just in time, a minute to spare. Thank you
Uh,
everyone for listening.
Yeah, that was really awesome, Isla. I know what I took away there is just constantly gathering feedback from employees and candidates is super important, right? And kind of helps you build consistently and not just stay stagnant throughout the process. And then just starting from scratch, defining the EVP right away, getting stakeholder buy-in, avoiding those traps that you mentioned is super important.
Yes.
But then incorporating it into everyday tasks like the hiring process. So I thought that was really cool. If we wrap this up and we say, hey, if you could to the audience here, if you could give them one piece of advice to take away after today's session, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I've banged on about it. I've said the word many times. I think that has to be it. I think when it comes to EVP, there's so much noise, right? And there's so many people doing this and that. And I think ultimately what candidates need is that clarity. They want to come and see that they are applying and putting all that time in for a company where they can really see themselves working at. And clarity and honesty is at the core of building that trust. And I think it's that trust that gets people to convert and get people excited about working there. And then you're not going to have that awkward onboarding week where actually it's all come crumbling down and that employee feels a little bit disheartened because it's not what they said it was. So I think honesty and clarity and just knowing who you're speaking to and crafting the message for them and speaking directly to them as well is just a really simple thing that you can be doing to be giving candidates confidence to convert. So yeah.
100%. Yeah, and Sarah made a great point in the comments, right? So she's found it useful to workshop the desired tone of voice up front to ensure all stakeholders are aligned on the approach and the challenge, and they challenge the thinking. I just think that's really awesome there. And yeah, great advice. Really appreciate your time, Isla. Where can people get hold of you? How can they follow you?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn like everyone else. And I'm sure Checkmate will share these slides and I'll put all the links and everything to kind of what I use to build it out. And yeah, we work very closely with Checkmate as well, so I'm sure I won't be hard to find.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Isla. Really appreciate your time. Some awesome learning there. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nick and team. See you.
See
Thanks
you
everyone
later.
for listening. Bye.